Some argue that documentary films are far more powerful than people may realize. It's been said that these nonfiction films have the ability to engage, challenge, and even inspire people to action. But how are nonfiction films bringing measurable change to our society? And how have documentaries enlightened our community? Joining me for this conversation are area filmmakers ready to jump in and share their perspectives. At the table is Heidi Ostertag, a senior producer for Worldwide Documentaries, Rajesh Barnabas, producer and educator for RCTV, and Chris Christopher, president of Christopher Communications and writer and producer for Blue Sky Project. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So I came across this news headline not too long ago, and it read, "Can documentaries change the world?" And I know these nonfiction films, they inform, and they get audiences to do something at times, and they make people aware of things that they may not have realized ever existed. So, but I want to know, get your perspective, can documentaries, in fact, change the world? Chris, I'll start with you.
Oh, I think absolutely. And the one that I would point to right off the bat would be An Inconvenient Truth. Many people were, of course, in the scientific world aware of climate change, but I don't think that we, generally speaking, were until that film came about. It sparked enormous conversation and raised a lot of awareness for what's a very serious issue of our time. And I think we can credit that film for that.
I think that in today's world, documentary filmmakers have many more platforms to showcase an issue, especially in the digital age. So more people can be engaged, and the medium, I think, has become even more powerful. I know with some of our films, you know, people come out and say, I feel transformed, I want to do something to help. Especially, I think, if you leave an issue with a hopeful note. It gives people hope that change can come about.
Rajesh, do you think they have that level of power?
Yeah, I think up until this point, we've seen the tool of film, be a tool for the powerful, often. And I think documentary film is like taking that and flipping it upside down, and it's giving tools to people that typically can't afford a big production house to, get their voice out. So.
Watching big budget fictional Hollywood films, this really serves as this break from reality for people, and they can be eye-opening as well and share a piece of history that we may not be aware of. But with narrative films, if people see that as entertainment, how would you describe then, at the very core, the purpose of documentaries?
Well, I would go out on a limb and say that I think when you make a documentary film, you have the time and the perspective that hopefully leads to both enlightenment and empathy, and it gives a different point of view on something that people may not have considered before because they haven't quite experienced the issue in that way.
So as filmmakers, when you're working on a project and when you're trying to open up different perspectives, change perspectives, when audiences say, I felt something, I was transformed, is something like that enough, or do you want to take it beyond that? Do you want the conversation to continue with some of the films that you're working on so that it does lead to some type of change?
I think that, yes, definitely. I mean, awareness is the first step. Our mission at Worldwide Documentaries is to bring awareness to the general public on an issue, whether it's HIV/AIDS or whether it's human trafficking or apartheid or environmental issues. What's global is now local. And we feel, and if you look back in history, any great human rights struggle, you have to create critical mass. The general public has to become involved to put pressure on lawmakers, on policymakers who can bring about change. And I think awareness empowers the general public to get involved on an issue. So I think it is a very, very powerful tool. And there's a lot of issues out there in today's world that can use the general public's voice, especially for those who have no voice in some of these issues.
And I can certainly point to a specific example of what you're talking about. 2 years ago, my partner David Marshall and I made a film about the Attica prison uprising, much of which had been concealed, deliberately concealed over the years. Our film came out, it was quite a journey. It was seen seen by Jim Lawrence at the Democrat and Chronicle editorial board. And when Governor Cuomo came in for an editorial board interview, Jim put him right on the spot and basically said, what are you going to do about this? Are you going to open up these records? And the governor made a commitment to do that. And I don't know, except for the fact that that film was top of mind for Jim, if that question ever would have been asked at that time and in that way.
That's a great example. That's a great example.
When I think of, Food Inc., for example, and Super Size Me, rather, and how that played a role, in Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign, and with the examples that you're sharing here, even on a local level. So with something like that, given, we talked about how more people have access to digital media, and you're saying, people that may not have been able to do a big production because of something such as a cell phone or, a more conveniently priced, digital camera, they do have that ability. So with the influx, we're seeing of these films, does that mean, are people still seeing the films? There's an influx in making them, but is the audience there to be able to, is it too much, or are they able to process them? Are they able to get to them?
I think that's a good question for social media and where we are in the digital age in general.
Right.
So much information is coming at us at once. I think that's the challenge. It's the challenge of the filmmaker to touch, as Chris said, the empathy, touch the hearts. We're all human beings, and most of these issues, touch the humanity in everyone. And I think that's what, particularly in the films that we deal with, which are mostly human rights issues. So I think it's the challenge, but it's a challenge across the board. I mean, for any news organization, television, newspaper. It's a lot of information out there.
I think as a teacher, I was a teacher in the city school district, I could get the kids to read a book, but it was much easier to give it to them in a visual format. So I think if you want to hit different audiences, depending on what audience you want, you're going to want to make the documentary almost move like an actual narrative style film, and so you're going to broaden the audience. So I look at documentaries almost like cliff notes to books that I want the students to read. So they might, there's the students that are going to watch the movies, but then not pick up the book, and so you're trying to grab them towards maybe, a deeper level of understanding an issue.
I actually think we're in a golden age of documentary filmmaking. The tools, as you mentioned a moment ago, are in more and more people's hands, which means that we have access to more and more stories told sometimes in a very unusual, beautiful, and compelling way. But also there are more platforms in documentary films than I think there's ever been. Between what we see on PBS and what we see on Netflix and Amazon, there is such a wide range of films available now. You could decide that all you're ever going to watch from now in time memoriam are documentary films and never be bored.
It's true. It's good. I see
And
that on
more
Netflix.
people say that. I mean, I'm amazed at people who say, "Oh my gosh, that's all I watch are documentaries." I'm like, "Thank you." It's great. It's great.
But I think you're always going to want people, there's always people who are going to want to turn on the TV just for escapism. So you're not really necessarily catering to that audience. You're trying to kind of pull maybe some of those people into a different category of entertainment.
Well, I remember one of the earliest documentaries I saw was Bowling for Columbine, and I'm curious. This film was highly criticized for being so one-sided, and can you do that in documentary film? Is that acceptable to just show one viewpoint? Is that in terms of getting the message out, or is it important, as in news with what we do, we have to find all different sides of the story to present and bring to the table? So are you finding that that's something we're seeing more and more, a one-sided angle, or is that just kind of few and far between?
I don't know that I can say that I think we're seeing that more and more, but I do think there is a distinction between being a journalist and being a documentary filmmaker. And as a filmmaker, you are allowed to have a point of view. It is your choice to present two sides of a story. But there's absolutely nothing that says a documentarian can't have a point of view. Now, I think many of us go into a film having a point of view. And then once you get into the story, the film starts taking you perhaps in a different direction. And personally, certainly I think it's important to follow where the material is taking you. And maybe you do end up in a different place, but there's nothing that says you can't have a point of view.
Yeah, that's the joy of documentary filmmaking too, is some of the surprises you come across, for sure.
I think also there's a kind of a gray zone between journalists and documentary filmmakers. A lot of journalists now go on to make documentary films. For example, Jeremy Scahill, who made Dirty Wars, Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras, who made Citizen 4 that won the Oscar in the documentary. So these are journalists kind of moving into the documentary field. And I really think that there's this idea of objectivity in journalism.
Right.
But I mean, it's what questions you tend to ask is kind of subjective, and also who do you interview is still subjective. So I think there's this false perception of objectivity in mainstream media today.
Well, if empathy is one ingredient in the recipe of making a documentary, I mean, are there other key ingredients that you use to create a film that will call people to action, that will inspire people to want to do something?
I think it's the stories. I mean,
me too.
It's the human stories, particularly the topics that that we work on, human trafficking and the vulnerable populations of the world and what affects them. I think the stories are ones of courage. They are stories of hope. And I think those are the things that are most compelling. For us too, we try to visually make the films as beautiful as we can because our topics are quite difficult sometimes. And so we've been very blessed with wonderful cinematographers, one of which is Richard Young, who passed away a few years ago, but his cinematography was absolutely stunning, and just was a beautiful partnership with the stories themselves from beautiful human beings.
So it takes a combination of empathy and then really finding that compelling story that connects with audiences and has a human touch. Well, very good. Well, a special thank you to my guests for joining me and weighing in really on this topic that I think it's important and it can fly under the radar in the midst of some of these big budget Hollywood dramas and reality TV. So you can check out some of the documentary films that are screening here in Rochester at the Little Theater. Just go to thelittle.org.